I never imagined a single text could feel like a bullet ricocheting through my chest. It was 6:17 a.m. when my phone buzzed against the chipped Formica countertop, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. I braced for spam. Instead, I stared, frozen, at a photograph of my wife, Emily Parker, kneeling beside a baby fox at the Lincoln Park Animal Shelter, her volunteer vest stained with dirt, her eyes fixed on Dr. Alex Carter's gentle hands as he examined the creature. A fold of paper pinned in the corner bore Alex's scrawled name, and in that instant every certainty I had about my marriage shattered. My coffee sat cold, its metallic tang lingering on my tongue as I clutched the mug tighter, knuckles whitening. The hum of traffic on Lakeshore Drive outside our second-floor condo window felt distant, irrelevant. I blinked twice, heart pounding. Did I really see what I thought I saw? My chest tightened, sweat prickling along my spine. The brass clock on the mantel ticked loudly, each second screaming at me that nothing would ever be the same. I dropped the phone onto the counter. My gaze flickered around the kitchen, a photo of Emily and me smiling against the Chicago skyline, our daughter's first birthday cake smeared in frosting, the chalkboard grocery list listing, puppy food, volunteer shift. Everything looked ordinary. But the photograph's edges felt like glass shards against my palm. I closed my eyes, inhaled the aroma of stale coffee and leftover takeout. My breathing stuttered as I replayed Emily's stories about, isn't he precious, and, Alex really knows how to handle these strays. She'd sounded so proud, so fulfilled. Now I wondered, was she looking at Alex the way she once looked at me? I staggered backward, bumping into the kitchen island. My mind raced, part denial, part desperate logic. Maybe it's just a professional photo, I told myself. She's only volunteering. That's what she said. But the look on Emily's face in the image, the soft curve of her mouth, the way her fingers lingered on Alex's arm, seemed loaded with something more. The metallic taste of betrayal flooded my senses, and I fought to keep my legs from crumpling. Slowly, I lifted my phone again. The unknown number flashed like a challenge. My thumb hovered over the message thread, feeling the weight of a decision, to ask Emily directly, to demand explanations, or to pretend I never saw it. My internal monologue hammered at me, stay calm. Breathe. Don't let panic win. Yet every muscle in my body urged me to run, to escape this moment. I sank onto the lone wooden chair at the table, wrists braced against the cold wood. The brass clock's ticking softened into a rhythmic pulse, syncing with my racing heart. With trembling fingers, I opened the photo's details, zooming in on Alex's name tag and Emily's volunteer badge. I recognized the shelter's logo, tattooed on my mind from every time she returned home late, eyes bright but explanations vague. I took a long sip of coffee, wincing as its bitterness washed over me. The world outside continued without pause, a car horn blared somewhere down the block, a distant siren wailed, and the sun rose higher over the city. But time felt suspended here in the kitchen. I closed my eyes, steeling myself. In a few minutes, I'd text Emily, we need to talk. Yet even as I drafted those words in my mind, I knew the real conversation wouldn't start until I gathered proof, and discovered just how deep her betrayal went. I closed my eyes and let the image of Emily slip away, replaced by memories of how our life used to be, before that photograph crushed everything. In my mind's eye, I see us driving north on Lakeshore Drive toward Evanston, the sun glinting off Lake Michigan's waves. Emily's laughter fills the car, her hand warm on mine as we planned our weekend, a leisurely brunch at Wilmette's The Nest Cafe, followed by browsing antique stores in Wicker Park. She wore a sundress that day, hair catching the breeze, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have someone so full of light. Back then, Emily volunteered at the Lincoln Park Animal Shelter 2 or 3 evenings a week. She'd return home late, coat dusted with sawdust and straw, her cheeks ruddy with satisfaction. Alex is incredible with the animals, she'd tell me over dinner, describing how Dr. Alex Carter, tall, with tousled brown hair and warm hazel eyes, calmed a terrified puppy named Marley. I'd nod, happy she found purpose. Those evenings, I buried myself in late work hours at the consulting firm on Michigan Avenue, telling myself she was making a difference. I recall one Saturday morning in January, snow swirling outside our Lincoln Square townhouse. I found a veterinary invoice from Carter Veterinary Clinic, Wrigleyville, tucked inside the recycling bin. It was itemized, examination fee, Marley, #A2371, and medication, antibiotics regimen. I'd never heard Emily mention Marley, and the date, December 15th, didn't align with her volunteer schedule. My brow furrowed as I pinched the paper between my fingers, but I tossed it aside, convincing myself I'd overlooked something trivial. She probably just helped out extra hours, I told myself. No big deal. Then there was the night when I heard her murmuring on her phone past midnight. I was grading presentation slides at my desk in the study when the hallway light clicked on. I froze, listening to her hushed voice. Something about surgery tomorrow and clinic hours. I remembered her saying she closed early that evening, yet her words suggested a talk with Alex about a delicate surgery for a rescue squirrel. I pressed my ear against the door, but couldn't make out the rest, only the soft timbre of her voice and the gentle reassurance she offered. I know you'll handle her, Alex. You're the only one I trust. My muscles tensed. I asked her about it the next morning over coffee, and she explained it away. We had an urgent case. That's all. I believed her then, chalked it up to her caring nature. In retrospect, I see it as the first crack in the foundation. I catch a glimpse of the brass clock on the mantel reflecting in the windowpane. Its hand seemed to hover over that memory, marking the moment doubt first crept into my heart. I remember how it felt, an uneasy flutter, like the first hint of a coming storm. Our adoption of Ruby, the beagle, now stands out as another red flag. Emily insisted on bringing Ruby home from Alex's clinic on Belmont Avenue. She told me Ruby had been surrendered by an elderly owner and needed extra care. I agreed, thinking it would lift Emily's spirits. She brought Ruby into our living room that evening, her eyes shining. He's going to help with Ruby's antibiotics, she said, rubbing Ruby's soft ears. Alex promised to stop by. I watched her cradle Ruby on the couch, and I recall the way her smile softened when she spoke Alex's name. I noted it at the time, but brushed it aside, thinking my imagination was being ridiculous. After all, we were building a home, raising our 2 children, and I trusted her. I sipped my lukewarm coffee, cold now, acrid taste biting my tongue, and realize how many times I chose comfort over confrontation. There was the mother's meeting at Sullivan Elementary where she left abruptly after whispering about checking on Marley. And the time I discovered a half-empty receipt for cocktails at a Wrigleyville bar when she said she was attending a volunteer thank you gathering. I confronted her once, my voice tight. Why did you spend nearly $100 at Fido's Lounge? You said it was just pizza after volunteering. She offered a soft laugh and explained, I met Alex there, he was finishing a shift. We just grabbed a quick bite. Honest. I swallowed my suspicion and nodded, reminded of her kindness to stray animals. Now, with the photograph before me, all those moments crystallize into undeniable proof that I should have asked more questions. The late-night calls, the mismatched receipts, and even that stray mention of Marley, they weren't random twists of fate, they were threads of a secret tapestry I refused to see. My pulse steadies as I stand and cross to the mantel. I touch the brass clock, tracing its cool surface. I remember how Emily once said it was heirloom, passed down from her grandmother, symbolizing the constancy of family time. Now, its ticking feels like a heartbeat transforming from comfort to admonition. It tells me I can't let these memories remain idle. I have to act. With a steadying breath, I push aside the memories and focus on the path ahead. The brass clock will keep ticking, and so will I, in time with gathering evidence, consulting with Rebecca, and plotting the methodical steps that will transform my heartbreak into action. The past might sting, but it also fuels my resolve. I will uncover every hidden truth Emily tried to bury in those volunteer nights, and the ticking clock will be both my witness and my guide. The next morning, the brass clock on my desk ticked insistently, its steady rhythm echoing the turmoil in my chest. I stood in my study, the pale dawn light filtering through the blinds, and made a decision. I would not crumble. I would channel my anguish into something constructive, something that would restore order and protect our children. With that resolve, I picked up my phone and called my older brother, Daniel, who lived in Detroit but flew into Chicago whenever I needed him. By 8 a.m., I was sipping strong black coffee at Beans and Brews in Lincoln Park with Daniel and my closest friend, Sarah Nguyen, a licensed counselor who specialized in family therapy. Daniel's presence was like an anchor. Over the hum of the cafe, he listened quietly as I recounted every detail, the photo of Emily and Alex Carter at the Lincoln Park Animal Shelter, the unexpected vet invoices, the hushed phone calls at midnight. Sarah reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. You're not alone, she said, voice steady. We'll help you sort this out. Between sips of coffee and tight-lipped nods, we formed a plan. First, I needed legal counsel. Daniel had recommended Rebecca Morales, an attorney known for handling sensitive family cases discreetly. By noon, I sat in Rebecca's modest office near the River North Courthouse, the brass clock on the wall ticking quietly behind her mahogany desk. She greeted me with a firm handshake and cool professionalism, asking only, "Tell me everything from the beginning." I slid the manila envelope across the desk, screenshots of text messages between Emily and Alex, digital invoices from Carter Veterinary Clinic in Wrigleyville, and the original photograph that had shattered my world. Rebecca's gaze shifted from screen to paper as she absorbed each piece of evidence. When she finally looked up, her expression was calm but resolute. "This is more than enough to start," she said. Over the next hour, she outlined my options: file for divorce, petition for primary custody of our children, and establish temporary restraining orders if necessary. She emphasized the importance of preserving all evidence in its original form: medical receipts, volunteer logs, security footage, so nothing could be challenged in court. Her voice was precise, every phrase deliberate. "We'll need sworn affidavits, notarized copies of these documents, and a clear timeline. You're going to gather everything you have and more." Leaving Rebecca's office, I felt the first surge of purpose since that brutal photograph arrived. The brass clock above me signaled 2:47 p.m., and I realized time was both my ally and foe. I returned home, heart pounding, and spent the afternoon cataloging every scrap of information related to Emily's activities at the shelter: a stack of volunteer sign-up sheets, emails from the shelter coordinator naming Emily as an after-hours caregiver, and a ledger of hospital visits for injured animals she had described in detail. Each page I filed into a large accordion folder made me feel a fraction more in control. Next, I turned my attention to the security cameras. I called a licensed technician, Jacob at SecureSite, who arrived just after 5 p.m. As Jacob mounted two discrete cameras, one overlooking the living room and the other pointed toward the spare bedroom, he commented on the placement of family photos and shared glances as if sensing the tension in the air. Once the cameras were live, I positioned myself at the study desk, watched the monitors, and waited. I had one goal: to confirm Emily's pattern of late-night departures and capture any meetings with Alex Carter on video. Meanwhile, I drafted preliminary custody proposals. I used a blank notebook with a soft black cover for brainstorming, section headers for visitation schedule, child support, education fund, and therapeutic counseling. I outlined a plan for our daughter, Chloe, age 8, and son, Henry, age 5, specifying that I would assume full-time residential custody with scheduled weekend visits for Emily, contingent upon her completing counseling and maintaining stable employment. I sketched out numbers for monthly support, tuition contributions for Henry's preschool in Lincoln Square and Chloe's piano lessons at the School of Music near Belmont and Sheffield. Each bullet point I wrote felt like a small victory. I was transforming heartbreak into concrete action. Late that evening, Sarah arrived at my door, carrying a thermos of chamomile tea. We sat at the kitchen island, where Emily once packed lunches for the kids, and poring over the custody notes. Sarah's questions were incisive. Have you included terms for co-parenting classes? What about a clause if Emily relocates to another city? Are you prepared to propose a neutral third-party mediator? I nodded, filling in gaps I hadn't considered. She also reminded me to document my emotional state, daily journal entries describing how the children were coping. Judges need to see stability, she said. Your mental health, theirs, all of it matters. The brass clock struck midnight as I added the final bullet: reflective journal, include dates and children's emotional milestones. Fatigue weighed on me, yet I sensed an unexpected calm. This ritual, cataloging evidence, drafting custody plans, consulting friends, had forged a path forward. Over the next week, I met Daniel for breakfast in Detroit whenever he could, reviewing each folder I'd organized. He handwritten indexes for every document: Folder 1, Emily's volunteer logs, 2019 to 2025, Folder 2, vet invoices from Alex Carter, December 2024 to May 2025, Folder 3, security camera timeline, June 1 to 7, 2025. He insisted on time-stamping every file on his phone for an added layer of documentation. I also met with a private investigator, Carla Simmons, who agreed to surveil Alex Carter's Belmont Avenue clinic after volunteer hours, discreetly following him to any nearby bar or coffee shop. Each evening, I returned home to review Carla's preliminary report, a timeline of Alex's comings and goings, sporadic visits to a bar called the Golden Bone in Wrigleyville, and occasional late-night pickups of special medical supplies, a euphemism that now felt loaded with suspicion. By the time I installed the final lockbox for my laptop, password-protected and containing encrypted backups of every digital file, the brass clock on my desk read 11:03 p.m. My eyes stung, but I straightened and pressed my palm to the cool brass. It had become more than a timepiece, it was a testament to focus and transformation. Each tick reminded me that while Emily's betrayal had cracked my world, it could not break me. I opened my journal and wrote, June 7, 2025, compiled all evidence, finalized custody draft, and secured surveillance report on Alex Carter. Feeling steadier today. Clara at shelter confirmed Emily's overtime shifts, she will testify as needed. I closed the journal, set my pen down, and let the room's silence envelope me. The brass clock's steady tick-tock was suddenly comforting, an affirmation that, despite the chaos, life moved forward with purpose. Tomorrow, I would meet with Rebecca once more to file the initial petition. But tonight, as I switched off the study lamp and walked down the hallway to retrieve the children's drawings hanging in the living room, I felt something resembling hope. My plan was in motion, and each deliberate step, evidence catalogued, cameras installed, custody terms drafted, had forged a path away from betrayal and toward justice. And as long as the brass clock ticked, I would keep moving forward, one measured beat at a time. The air in Rebecca's office felt thin and electric as I slid the manila envelope across her mahogany desk. Emily sat opposite me, her posture brittle, eyes downcast. The brass clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second hammering the inevitability of this moment. When Rebecca nodded, I took a deep breath and began. These are invoices from Carter Veterinary Clinic, I said, sliding a stack of papers forward. Dates and services billed on nights you told me you were volunteering. Here, December 15th, January 8th, March 22nd. My voice remained calm, each word deliberate. Emily's hand trembled at her side. I leaned forward, pulling a printed transcript of her messages with Alex Carter. This is from March 5th. You wrote, "Can't wait to see you at the clinic tonight, at 10:47 p.m. That's 2 hours after you said you'd be home watching a documentary with me." My chest felt hollow, but my tone held no accusation, only fact. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came. She squeezed her eyes shut as if bracing against a storm. I rifled through a set of photographs, Emily and Alex in the animal shelter office, heads bent close over an injured Labrador, her hand brushing his arm as he stitched a wound. "I found this when I followed the volunteer logs," I said, watching her flinch. "That night, you were supposed to be at the shelter until 8 p.m., but this photo's timestamp is 10:12 p.m. I lifted the wedding photo that lay beside her coffee cup, us on Navy Pier, the city skyline ablaze behind our smiles. I placed it face down on the desk, chest downcast. This was supposed to be the promise of forever. Instead, you chose someone else. My voice cracked only slightly. Emily shifted in her seat, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Rebecca interjected gently, "Michael, do you have the security footage?" I nodded and slid a USB drive across the desk. "This contains recordings from June 1st and 2nd. You'll notice Emily leaving through the back door at 9:47 p.m., and again at 11:03 p.m., heading toward Alex's apartment in Wrigleyville." I watched Emily's face collapse as Rebecca clicked through the time-stamped clips, each frame indicting her deception. Silence fell, broken only by the brass clock's ticking. After a moment, Emily raised her head, eyes swollen. "Michael. I can explain." Her voice was small, tentative. I leaned back, arms crossed. "Explain what?" I asked, tone measured. She faltered, throat bobbing. "Alex and I, it just happened. We were both lonely." I inhaled, exhaling slowly. "You lied. You built a life of lies. You hid this from me and our children." My hand hovered over the wedding photo, but I didn't pick it up. Instead, I let it lie face down, a silent symbol of our marriage's end. Emily buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. Rebecca gave me a sympathetic look, clipboard poised. I said softly, "I'm not here for excuses. This is over." Emily's sob rose in the hush. She looked up, eyes red. "Please, don't take the kids away." Her plea felt hollow after months of betrayal. I felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty. Her choices had sealed our fate. As I stood to leave, I paused by the brass clock on the office wall. Its steady tick felt like the final pulse of our marriage, past and present colliding. Emily's sobbing followed me into the hallway, but I pressed forward, resolve hardening. Every piece of evidence, every deliberate step had led to this, a calm, undeniable unraveling of lies. When I walked out of the building into the late afternoon light, the brass clock's tick still echoed in my mind, a reminder that time moves forward, and so must I. The brass clock on my desk ticked steadily as I reviewed the final divorce decree and custody agreement. It was June 20, 2025, and the courtroom's air still smelled of polished wood and courthouse paper. Sitting across from Rebecca Morales, I watched her initial the last page, legally finalizing that I'd retain primary custody of Chloe, 8, and Henry, 5, while Emily would have supervised weekend visits contingent on completed counseling. She'd also relinquished our Lincoln Square condo, allowing me to remain in the only home our children had ever known. Back in the quiet of our living room that evening, I removed Emily's volunteer vest from the closet and folded it carefully, setting it on a shelf in the garage. The space suddenly felt emptier, her laughter and stray dog stories no longer echoing in these walls. The brass clock, heirloom from Emily's grandmother, sat beside a new photograph, Chloe and Henry running toward the Buckingham Fountain in Grant Park, their faces lit with carefree joy. I pressed a hand to the clock's cool brass face, grateful its ticking now marked the steady rhythm of my children's restored routine. Over the next week, I filed final paperwork to divide our joint bank accounts and transfer the Jeep title into my name. I arranged for Chloe's piano lessons to continue at the music school near Belmont and Sheffield, funded by the child support payment Emily would send monthly. I also negotiated a settlement ensuring Henry's preschool tuition in Lincoln Square was fully covered. Every signature I added felt like a brick laid in rebuilding our lives. On Father's Day, I took the kids to the Field Museum. Watching them marvel at the T-Rex skeleton and giggle over interactive exhibits felt like a balm on my aching heart. I tucked a small brass key, one of many from our old condo, into my pocket, a symbolic gesture to remind myself that while one door closed, countless others lay ahead. That evening, I sat at the kitchen island with my journal and a fresh cup of coffee, this one hot and untainted by betrayal. I began drafting my first blog post From Betrayal to Balance, sharing how measured action and evidence gathering guided me from shock to stability. I outlined chapters, recognizing the signs, cataloging evidence, legal preparation, and finding purpose beyond divorce. For the first time since Emily's betrayal, I felt a quiet spark of hope. Days later, I called Sarah and Gwyn to schedule a co-parenting seminar for myself and Emily, an offer she hadn't yet accepted. I set up counseling sessions for Chloe and Henry with a child psychologist on North Avenue, ensuring they had space to process their feelings. Each step felt deliberate, guided by the ticking brass clock reminding me that healing was a process, measured, patient, and steady. As dusk settled over Chicago and the brass clock chimed 9 p.m., I tucked my children into bed with a story about a loyal German shepherd who found a new home after betrayal. Their eyes drifted closed, and I kissed their foreheads, inhaling the soft scent of bedtime. I turned off the light, paused at the threshold, and let the clock's steady tick accompany me to the study. The past still cast its shadow, but in that measured ticking, I found reassurance. Time moves forward, and so do I, one deliberate beat at a time.